Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel that we're hosting for Mental Health Awareness Week on the topic of how leaders manage workplace stress. So Mental Health Awareness Week serves as an important reminder for really a topic that we should be prioritizing every day in our lives, which is our mental health and well-being, especially in the workplace. And here at WONE, we've chosen to focus intentionally more specifically on stress. And that's because, we really believe that stress is something that's impacting a huge population in our workplace. And if effectively managed, can unlock huge gains on our own personal health, but also on our business health. I think it's particularly important at this moment where we're seeing huge efficiency gains across technology and across science. One particular one that everyone's talking about at the moment is AI. We're seeing ChatGPT, especially in the workplace, being used to maximize efficiency, whether it's recording meetings and transcribing them, whether it's writing blog posts, writing code, etc. But what I find really startling is that in these efficiency gains, we're actually leaving the most important element behind, which is our own well-being. And unfortunately, whilst we're seeing these advances in technology and science, we're actually seeing the quality of our working lives declining. And so we see, for example, sick leave as the highest in over a decade in the UK, with stress cited as one of the biggest reasons. We're also seeing about 85% of the working population in the US and UK regularly report workplace stress. And on our platform, actually 35% report experiencing chronic stress daily. And so whilst this problem of stress is, may seem large and may seem complex, actually, we don't believe that the solution needs to be. And that's why I'm excited to be hosting today's panel and to have three leaders that, I've seen really prioritize well-being in work, both for themselves, but also as leaders and how they manage teams. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more from each one of you on your insights of how you've done this in each of your businesses, and also, discussing collectively how we can give tips and tools for others listening today to put those steps into action. But first, before we begin the panel, I'd like to start with a 60-second breathing exercise, which is done in the true WONE way, where we really believe that actually, if we want to start putting lessons into practice, we should do so now, and we should start small with a small micro moment. So Imogen is going to share a breathing exercise for us all to do together.
Find yourself in a comfortable upright position, and ideally this exercise is done through the nose. So start to sync your breath with the tones of the piano. So breathe out, in, and let go. Fully in, and keep going all the way to the end, and let go all the way to the end. In again, letting go. And just get used to breathing at that speed. Letting go.
Thank you, Imogen, for sharing that. And that I think serves as an important reminder for us to kick off as we kick off the session that actually all you need is 60 seconds. The biggest reason we hear for people not engaging in their well-being and their health is that they don't have time. And ironically, they're too stressed. And so, we say, actually, if you can just carve out that really short break in your day, even in between a meeting or in between traveling, getting on a plane, etc., it goes a huge way to actually down-regulating your nervous system and turning off that stress response before it becomes chronic. So I'd like to now introduce the panelists that we have today. So firstly, we have Chris from Arm. Chris is the Senior Director of People Enablement at Arm, which is a multinational semiconductor design company. I think powers the majority, it's 99% of the world's smartphones. And Chris leads multiple international teams from Cambridge and is currently designing the global rollout of Arm's wellbeing strategy. We have Joe, who's the Director of Wellbeing and of Counsel at Quinn Emanuel. Quinn Emanuel is a top US law firm. It's ranked as the most feared US law firm in litigation. And Joe set up and leads the wellbeing team at Quinn Emanuel, and also founded the Lawyers Depression Society, which is addressing depression, other mental health issues in the legal profession. And Sherry is a partner and the head of investor relations and fundraising at Raine, which is a global advisor and investment bank. And Sherry has previously held senior leadership positions across other financial institutions such as JP Morgan, Rothschild, and Credit Suisse. So a very warm welcome to all of you. To get started, I would like to first touch on, you're all leaders, as I've just explained in the bios, in high growth, high performing businesses across law, finance, and tech, which are notorious for being high growth, high demanding, and therefore also naturally typically high stress environments. And so I'd really love to learn each of your personal stories and strategies for your own ways that you manage well-being in your roles. And so Sherry, I'd love to start with you as as a leader in the financial industry. What do you personally do to manage your well-being?
Yeah, thank you, Riva and Chris and Joe, for the conversation today. Looking forward to it, to celebrate an important week, mental health awareness. So looking forward to the conversation. So as Riva mentioned, I've been in the finance world for over 20 years. To date myself, I guess I'm vintage at this point. I started really doing work in the late 90s when tech was really first starting. Silicon Valley was growing, and it's only grown since then, and it's only going to grow more going forward. I've also seen growth at Raine. I've been at the firm for almost 13 years. I joined the firm when we were about 20 people, always global, but now we are in 9 offices with over 200 employees. So we've grown 10x in the last 15 years. We've grown from a first-time growth equity fund on the part of the business that I focus on to over $3 billion of assets under management with 3 investment strategies. So we have been very busy in an industry that does have high demands. And we've also all lived through COVID. I'll just make one personal note that I think, COVID is still with us, especially now as we see the impact already from AI. My nephew graduated from the University of Kentucky about 2 weeks ago. They had a commencement ceremony that went off without a hitch. The president of the university talked about the impact of COVID on young people, not having graduated in 2020, not having graduations. And the celebration was palatable in the audience, the joy of being together in person. And that was a good reminder of what's important in our world, which is continuing to be human in a world that's filled with a lot of technology. So when I stepped back and looked about what are the common stress triggers in my role and also in the finance industry, which may or may not echo what Chris and Joe will say, because we're similar but different. I thought about 4 things. We do very high profile transaction work. We're in the press pretty much every day. We have a lot of time sensitive deadlines that are imposed on our teams, both internally and externally. We're in a client-facing, client-serving business that now requires 24/7 customer service. And to echo Riva's point, we are in a world with an overload of data and information. My simple example on that point is emails. I have used to pride myself on always being the person with the 20 email inbox. And I struggle daily with getting my inbox down to 200, or less emails. And that causes me a lot of both anxiety and also stress. So a couple things, and I'm sure we're going to come back to more of like managing our own individual stress, but just in terms of, understanding specific stress triggers around those broader couple points that I made around stress and finance is continuing to be positive around the work we do and help companies grow and transform. And that's a really positive impact on the world. So keeping a really strong positive mindset can help offset some of those stress triggers around finance. Second is identifying those feeling overwhelmed triggers and really utilizing time management tools. And I've started to put specific strategies in, for example, on my email management. And then use those stress management tools to get to a productive place. So whether that is the meditation during the workday or taking time to do breathing before the next set of 5 Zooms, but using the tools with the specific objective to get to a place that you can be productive as an employee. So those are kind of how I think about I think stress triggers for finance. Raine certainly falls within that, and how I big picture think about identifying stress triggers or maybe sometimes trying to avoid them, and if we see them, how to manage them.
Great, thank you, Sherry. Those are great insights. I think especially what you identified as a positive mindset is so important, because often in a workplace we can't always control the triggers, the environmental cues, but what we can control is how we respond to them, and that is so important to develop. So thank you for sharing your strategies. Joe, I'd love to move on to you. I think your path is interesting because you started off first as a practicing lawyer at Quinn Emanuel and then decided to transition to lead the wellbeing team. And I think that's an important one for us in this context. So are you happy to share your journey there?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I can say that, listening to Sherry and contemplating the stressors in the legal profession, I can feel my blood pressure rising just thinking about, the emails and all that. When I was thinking about the law, we have Quinn Emanuel, the most feared law firm, ranking. We win almost 90% of our cases. Now, think about coming in as a young attorney, and that's the perception outside the firm. You're working on a case where you don't make the law, you don't make the facts, but you see yourself as responsible for trying to win 90% of your cases. So you're responsible for the results. And you've got the fire hose of emails coming in, hundreds, thousands a day as you're working on your cases. You've got 24/7 client service. You've got the pressures to keep costs down while keeping your teams lean and profits up. So all that conspiring against the little self that sees itself as an island sometimes, it can paint a really stressful picture. So I've certainly lived it, along with a lot of my colleagues who are living it to this day. And, I reached out to the partners at Quinn and asked them how they deal with stress, and put together a document to try to let people at the firm know that, we're all in this together. Everybody's dealing with stress, and here's how our top people deal with it. And so their common answers were: make time for sleep, make time for exercise, make time for family, take breaks, do things you enjoy. And what I found interesting is the parallel between the responses and one's approach, which really comes down to taking time to prioritize your peace of mind and your well-being. Well, even if it's just little breaks. And I think that's where it's got to start is with little breaks. Because honestly, when I was working 3,000 plus billable hours in a year, I wasn't thinking I had time for a break for mindfulness or yoga. I didn't know what those things were, and I didn't have time for them. And I don't know if you told me that was going to be the answer, I'd be like, come on. You're not living in my world. You know, my world was like fear driven in some sense, perfection driven in another sense. So I think micro doses is the way to go. You know, I haven't really talked about my transition from, you know, being a partner at Quinn to more fully focusing on well-being, but because it's kind of a long story, but the short version of it is it sort of happened as a result of like a shift in my priorities, where I was very focused on being competitive, very focused on winning. And I had an event in my life that caused me to rethink everything. And I became very much focused on connection, service, and you know, love, connection, purpose. And so I'm trying to be of service. And I think this is the best way I can do it is trying to increase the peace and joy in all of our lives as best I can.
Amazing. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you sharing your own personal story. I think it's so important, you know, to actually for us as leaders to share our own personal experiences to then normalize that in the workplace as well. And Chris, I think for you, I'd love to hear, you know, actually leading the wellbeing strategy at ARM, going through especially a particularly stressful time over the last year. You know, I think ARM was the largest IPO of 2023. How have you, personally balanced your own well-being and also seen it reflected as you lead well-being at ARM?
Yeah, great question. And yes, it's been an intense year for the company. And I've been with ARM about 7 years. And the things that cause stress is a lot of things resonate with what Sherry and Joe said. It is the pace, it is the speed of wanting to move things forward. I've got a global team of people across all the way from Taiwan on one side of the globe to California on the other, who all want time, who all want to talk, who all want all input and direction and context, because we've got a fabulous growing business. And the positive side of that, if you work in the people space, is you're enabling the business to do that. And therefore you want to serve, you want to make a difference, you want to help the business be stronger and make sure the business is performing really well. And so that and I recognize the flurry of emails and the demands on the time around that. And is often the lack of time to think things through deeply that sometimes is stressful in terms of knowing you've got deadlines to meet and things to deliver. And have you got time to do your work properly and to think that through, which is where I find a lot of the stress comes from that journey. And so how do I manage that? I think it's a lot about energy. You said, Riva, it's about your mindset and what you bring to it. I've learned here I can do far more than I thought I could do and deliver by showing up well in the conversation, how you come into approach work. And so for me, it's around where do you get your energy from? And I get energy from talking to colleagues to feeling I'm making a difference. And personally, I find I get energy from spending time with my family, my children. I get energy from being outside. I get energy feeling I've contributed to something. And so back in the pandemic, I set myself kind of 3 daily goals in terms of it's a good day if you get outside, you spend time with the kids, you do something, contribute to the household. And I've kept that as kind of my 3 very simple goals for every day. So no matter how busy and how long the working day might be, I will always aim to do those 3 things. And even today, I've been outside for a walk. It doesn't have to be a long walk, but I know that moment in taking a breath, as it were, and focusing on how are you feeling, how are you doing, clear your mind of the list of things to do in the afternoon and spend the time stepping back from that helps give me the energy for the second half of the day and what comes on and what follows from there. And so how are we driving that through our wellbeing strategy? In ARM, it's around thinking one size doesn't fit all. And people need to take responsibility for their well-being, and we need to help equip them to do that. So we provide tools like Walking on Earth, made lots of digital resources available. We've got a varied offering of different types of classes and sessions that we promote in terms of what we do, and foster people being able to talk about people, to talk about what they're going through, and to kind of encourage people to take those moments and to do those things. We give people quarterly days off to spend time with family, knowing that everybody else is off at the same time, so you can step away from your email, because we know that that's one of the things that causes you stress, is taking time out, knowing that other people might be coming back to you. So it's trying to build kind of some of those insights into what we do to equip people to manage their own well-being.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing those. And yeah, agreed. I really love the example of thinking of what energizes you. It's something that I actually put in place about a month ago when I was feeling particularly depleted, and went through everything in my week, including work meetings, friends, all commitments, and really thought about what is bringing me energy versus what's depleting it. And I think thinking about, our mind in that muscle in a similar way to the way we think about training our body is a really useful analogy. So thank you. I'd like to move on to discussing, around the topic of leadership and well-being, and actually thinking more about the impact that adopting well-being practices has had on each of you as leaders, particularly on how you show up as a leader, and then also how that has a knock-on effect on your teams. Because we see through psychological studies that actually the effect of mirroring and the effect of what's perceived as the highest authority in the room has the largest impact on then how others will feel. And in the same way we talk about, how smiling is contagious, actually stress is contagious too. So I think this is really important lesson for us to talk about. I think, Sherry, this was something that we actually touched on when we last caught up, and you spoke a little bit about when you mentioned about generations and different generations going through the pandemic and managing stress in different ways. So I'd love to hear from you. I think you've already shared some really interesting examples with me of how you've noticed changes in your leadership through prioritizing your well-being.
Yeah, I would just touch on Joe's point. I think this has something to do with COVID. I think it has something to do with kind of the tech 24/7 and the data overload that we're all facing, world events, climate change, a number of factors. But I would say, similar to Joe, I feel like before the pandemic, it was, if someone said jump, I said how high. It was work hard all the time. And I think obviously many of us in leadership positions, we benefited from having stimulating, interesting jobs and challenges during COVID, but I think that is also what has led to a lot of leadership burnout. And also it was a pandemic that had, significant mental health impacts on so many people. And so I've still jumped really high, but some days I'm okay to say I'm not going to jump today. I'm going to, relax a little bit. So to your point, Riva, as a leader at Raine, I've also through COVID have built up a bigger team. I manage a team of 4 professionals for the first time in my career. And so that's been a lot of change. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how to be a leader, not just of my team, but as a leader and partner at Raine. And so I do think we as leaders have to think about the techniques we need to employ so that we can come to work with that smile and be the source of stability. My team knows a lot of my parallels to managing is thinking about how I deal with my 2 teenage children who are getting to be more like adults and at 14 and 17. And what they want is, consistency, stability, support, a partner, a partner, not so much the mommy or daddy, but really, someone who they look up to and can come to. So a couple of things I've done myself to make sure I can bring that to my team, every day. And no one's perfect. I think that's the other thing that we're all learning to manage in an ever-changing world. And so being flexible is one thing. But one thing that, and Riva, you and I have talked about this, and you do it really well, is taking that time to unplug. I think if it's, a 15-minute break every day, that is really helpful. But one thing that I have found really helpful is one time a year, and we offer this for our employees to have, blackout time. But as a leader, one time a year being 100% unplugged from work for a week. I come back completely rejuvenated, really a clean mind, a lot of ideas. And so even if I'm not going away to do a work retreat in effect, and I'm going on vacation with my family, it's a really therapeutic time for me as a leader of Raine, and that has been really valuable. So I will continue to do that. This is more of a whip for me, a work in progress, but dedicated blocks of time with no Zoom that aren't the weekends. And that's obviously in the world we all live in, very, very difficult, but it does. I had this actually yesterday. It does allow you to do leadership work. It allows you to brainstorm. It allows you to actually be efficient with work you need to get done and prioritize. So that's the second thing. And then most importantly is taking, and I cannot remember where I picked this up on one of the WONE sessions, but around intentional time with your team, and really taking the time to be in person with your direct, kind of your direct team, also colleagues, of course, but the team as a priority, because so much of the work that we do is on Zoom. So that's what I've done from a leadership perspective. I just briefly on just, how I'm supporting the team then, tactically, regular check-ins and communication. I think we've talked about this, but measurable, like short-term objectives, because that can help kind of manage the feeling of being overwhelming, and hopefully listening and connecting are really important. And the last thing I'll say is being, having that positivity, but really bringing like, this is fun, this is exciting, and bringing that a little bit of levity to what we're doing. And I'm fortunate to have, work with a lot of people who we do really serious and important work, but we also enjoy ourselves while we're doing that, and trying to maintain that on a daily basis, I have found to be quite effective.
Thank you, Sherry. A ton of valuable insights. I think even if we just action one of those in our lives, we can start seeing meaningful difference. But yeah, I agree with both the importance of those short micro moments, but then longer term unplugs as well, and all this really fully recharge and recover. Joe, I'd like to move on to you with the same question. I think in particular you mentioned, right, the survey that you did to all the partners of the firm, which I thought was interesting. So would love to hear your own perspective, but also if you could bring in some of those findings as well, in how you've seen the ripple effects, that would be great as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think, even though we are the most feared firm, I think that one of the keys to our success as a firm and to the well-being of our people is the love in the firm. And it's the love for, I think, the work that we do, that people actually really love to litigate and do trial work. And that's why they come to Quinn. I think it's one of the benefits of this firm is that we have a common purpose, in that we really like to go into court and help our clients. And we don't do everything, but we do trial work. And so because we're so focused and we have that common purpose and that common value or love, I think that's really, really quite powerful in terms of well-being. Now, in terms of, I think the firm does a lot of good things to foster that among our young attorneys. So it helps them get to trial earlier by allowing like a young attorney to go to trial free to the client, to learn early on what is this all about, all this work you're doing, where does your little discovery project fit into the bigger case. You understand it better when you see the whole thing up front. And so I think the firm was built very intelligently by John Quinn, and it's built a lot on the concept of love of trial work, which I think is really powerful. In terms of like teamwork and what we do well, what we can do better. I think it's really about being there for each other, listening, communicating, what Sherry was saying, having an open mind in some sense. And also just thinking back to when I was a young young associate or a younger partner, and being really focused on getting the work done and the result, and not thinking so much about the personal lives of my colleagues, not thinking about the time I would send an email, not thinking about the personal lives of our adversaries, and thinking of them as purely adversaries, as opposed to, brothers and sisters in the larger dispute resolution process, and thinking about our colleagues as, brothers and sisters and siblings in a larger process, and actually caring that this person has a personal life, and that, maybe I shouldn't be sending an email to them on Friday night or Saturday or Sunday, or at least being mindful and letting them know that, yes, I realize I'm emailing at a bad time, and this is why. But I think over the years I've gotten better at expressing and acting on how I actually care about people, instead of being robotic. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. I think having a common purpose is so fundamental. And it's something that, yeah, very, very lucky to experience at WONE with the team. And actually, Chris, I think that's a nice segue onto you, because I know it's something that you've also mentioned is something that employees at ARM feel very passionate about, the shared mission and the purpose. And you've actually said something similar about how that is so important to the culture of the team. So we'd love to hear some of your insights as well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think there is something when you see people who are absolutely caught up in the love of what they do that makes a real difference to how people feel and able to cope with pressure, cope with stress, cope with difficulties and the deadlines if they really fundamentally enjoy what they're doing. And we're lucky we've got thousands of brilliant engineers who love what they're doing, who are deep experts in their field, who get to do things at scale. As you say, we've got 99% of smartphones are built on ARM technology in some regard, and that's a tremendously exciting thing for a young engineer to come into the organization and see they can work on something which will lead to their designs being implemented as part of that across such a broad ecosystem. That's quite exciting for people to get driven by. And we've got a very strong collaborative culture around not competing with each other, but being part of a bigger ecosystem and partnering across that to be successful, which is unique in some places that I've worked before in my career. And I really enjoy about the fact that people want you to be successful, and they are rooting for you as much as for themselves. And that makes a big difference to how it feels around work if you can foster that environment. So come back to the question around being a leader and what do you do? And the tone that you set is really important in terms of, do you point the finger and blame people when things don't work, or shout when things aren't there? Or do you show up and say, okay, how do we work with people who might not be on the same page as you, as Joe was saying? Yeah, how do you work with people and say, what do they care about? What are they interested in? How do I work with them to find a way we can move forward together? And think about the impact you have on the team. So to your point about Joe sending emails, not thinking about the timing, I've got some people on my team who want me to send emails whenever I send them. And I get up early in the morning. I've got young kids, I get up before everyone else is awake and do stuff. But some people find it really stressful seeing their mailbox full of emails from me at 6 a.m. when they come online. The first thing they see when they wake up doesn't want to be a load of emails from me. So there's some people I will delay send them later in the day, or I'll write them and hit send later. And there's some people I'll send it as it is, because they'd much rather have the authenticity from me about when I've actually been doing the work, rather than thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't done the work at the same speed that Chris has. I've had 2 hours more than them to get that work done. There's something around that in terms of being mindful of who you send to what, and know the people and know what's going on for them. One of the big things I learned in the pandemic was be curious about people, because people will generally open up to you showing a genuine interest in them, and don't just ask how are you for the sake of it's a conversation opener, but listen for the clues, ask about things that they mention that are important to them, build that relationship where they can tell you what's going on for them, because the more you know about where they are, the more you can think about how you show up and how that impacts their performance and their well-being. And then finally, I think there's something around, as you get more senior, you get less feedback, and it's important to cultivate people who will be honest with you and say, this is how you're showing up. You look stressed, you're stressing me out because of how you're showing up, versus did I get that right? And I'm fortunate I've been able to cultivate people who are very direct with me and will tell me, that wasn't a good meeting, or you didn't come across well in that, you look stressed, you have a plan. And people now say, did I get that right? I think I might have been a bit too edgy with that person. What do you think? And they'll give me good feedback around that. So I think those are probably some of my things in terms of knowing your team, being curious, being interested, thinking about the shadow you cast. How do you deal with things when they go wrong? And how do you get people to tell you how you're doing and give you that insight? then allows you to prioritize your own well-being in your own way and think, okay, what can I do to make sure I show up in the okay way, that I'm then equipped and resilient enough to deal with whatever comes up in that work context.
Yeah, super valuable. Thank you, Chris. That's a very nuanced and deep understanding that, I think is a true quality of leadership, probably the most important. So thank you for sharing that. We don't have much time left, and I do want to leave some time for questions. So I want to just do a very quick fire round. So just a few questions for each of you, just like quick one-liner answers. So let's reverse the order. So Chris, I'll start with you first. What is, if you have to say your top 3 must-dos for your well-being in a week?
Must-dos for me: get outside, spend time in nature, get some sleep, and find something to work on in the week that gives me joy.
Amazing. Favorite part of the WONE app?
I've got the one index. It's really useful in thinking about the whole, all different things that contribute to well-being. It's not just about work, it's about the whole of life, and you put that into it.
Amazing. And then final question, what would be your one biggest piece of advice to those who are at the very beginning of their well-being journey?
I think it's know yourself. I think the more you know and understand yourself and what works for you and what drives you and motivates you and what stresses you and what gives you energy, everything else comes from there. Once you understand yourself, you can then manage yourself, and you can then manage how you show up with others and prioritize those things. But it starts from understanding yourself.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, Joe. So same questions. Must-dos, top 3 must-dos for your well-being routine in a week.
I think spirituality, my connection with a higher power has been really, really, really important for me. I've been able to take a lot of my problems, give them away. And, I didn't always have that. And it's been great. And so, that all kind of falls into like meditation, getting time in nature. They all, to me, relate to sort of this connection to this higher power or higher intelligence or something larger than my little egoic self.
No, thank you. And favorite part of the WONE app?
So I like that the content is small and bite-sized for small breaks, and that's helpful in encouraging people to use it. I also like the WONE index, although I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with it. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and my energy score is really low, and so now I'm like feeling bad about that. But maybe I shouldn't feel bad. But you know what I'm saying? It's a really cool tool, and I'm learning to use it.
Yeah, importance there as well. And biggest piece of advice to those beginning their journey?
I think the answer is love to every question. I think that loving yourself, prioritizing your peace of mind is the answer.
Amazing. Thank you.
Easier said than done, but there you go.
Well, it starts with awareness. And Sherry, over to you. So favorite must-dos for your well-being routine?
Definitely the walk, whether it's to and from the office, or on the weekend around the block or in nature. It's mind clearing, micro moment. My journal, whether it's every day or only a couple times a week, it has to happen for me every week. And then, we spend a lot of time at the office. So always every day looking for something positive that came out of my day, whether it's a moment with a work colleague, a piece of work that I produced, something I stood up for, something a colleague achieved. That's really important for me.
Thank you.
And in terms of WONE, I'm not going to answer the question because I'm going to say the sessions. I think the app is great because it's looking to be more prescriptive, not just a data tool, but ultimately very prescriptive. And I think that's like a huge part of the power of the app. But I do think complementing it with these sessions brings that human connection, and it's been incredibly valuable to me as a professional and a person. And then my advice is it can be micro moments, but really, it kind of goes to Joe's point about spirituality or religion, but is prioritizing it every day, even if it's for 5 minutes, in whatever form it is, every day, kind of like the way, you know, you may pray or do your journal or do your walk, but something, because then you build that muscle memory, like brushing your teeth.
Thank you. And with that, I will close the panel and hand back to Imogen. But firstly, I just want to say a massive thank you, Chris, Joe, and Sherry, for joining us on this panel and for sharing your own lessons, and really for being so authentic and open and transparent. I do think, you know, change ultimately starts from us spreading the world and then creating the ripple effect off the back of that. So thank you for taking the time to share your insights with all of us today.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. And now that you've heard the insights from Sherry, Joe, and Chris, I am going to take a quick 5 minutes to outline how the Walking on Earth can help you to take those micro moments of recovery and break the stress cycle to allow you to feel and perform at your best. So if you haven't activated your account yet and your organization has set you up with a Walking on Earth account, you'll have received an email today titled "Get Started on Your Health Journey." It will look like this. And I'm going to ask a bit of audience participation while I do this. It's not very intense. It is just so that you can pull that email up if you haven't activated your account yet, and click into it. To activate your account, all you need to do is click this Get Started link here. And you will follow the instructions on your screen, which will take you to create your account. It is as simple as that. So I will let you activate your account now. If you're joining on a mobile, I'd recommend you download the app first and then return to the email and click that Get Started link. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. And if you are struggling at all, feel free to email support@walkingonearth.com. When you log in for the first time, you're asked to complete some quick onboarding steps. And the most important section here is the calendar permissions. So if you grant permissions there, we will be able to send 3 calendar invites a week. And we regularly hear really great feedback that these invites serve as a helpful reminder to carve out time. Big nods from Chris. I've had that feedback from Chris lots of times, that those invites are really helpful. And then you'll also be encouraged to explore different practices as well. So what is not to love? And then just to touch on our responsibilities with regards to confidentiality, we understand that health and well-being is entirely personal, and we take our responsibility for your confidentiality extremely seriously. We will never pass on any information about any individual users to anyone. All of the data is anonymized and aggregated and subject to our stringent confidentiality policy. Now, once you're logged in, you will see your home screen, which I'm going to share my screen again. So as you land on your home screen, you'll see your WONE index score at the top and your recommendations tailored specifically to your needs. We recommend that you do start your journey by taking your WONE index, as Chris said. This is a 6-minute assessment created alongside medical professionals and leading scientists, which gives you an accurate measure of your health. You also have the option to connect a wearable device to get daily updates to your index score, whether you like it or not, Joe, by incorporating your biometric data. Your scores are split out across energy, resilience, and activity to give you a deeper understanding of which areas of your health you should focus on next. And these scores are out of 100. So the higher your score, the more resilient you are within that area of your health. And by giving you a measure of your resilience, you can understand what you need to do to improve this in the future. So you can click into each of these, and then you can understand more about how to improve these with our AI coach. So these are personalized to you. If you'd like to see even more personalized recommendations, you have your daily plan here. And these suggestions are based on your past activity and preferences in combination with your index results to help you with what you need right now. If you scroll on down, you'll be able to see some of our most popular sessions and articles. And you will also be able to pick up where you left off with your favorite sessions down here. If you would like to take a look at your upcoming live sessions, you can click on the sessions tab here. and look through to see what takes your fancy. All of the times are shown in your current time zone and are designed to be short and impactful. So they'll fit into your flow of work to allow you to take time to reset across the working week. If you like the look of a session, you can click into it to see more, or you can simply press book. This then sends a calendar invite, so you have that time carved out to practice. It is as simple as that. If you have booked into a couple of sessions and you'd like to take a look at these, you can click into your schedule here. We have sessions daily this week, as it is Mental Health Awareness Week, and I would like to highlight this session here, which is with double Olympian and double championship medalist Jack Green. So it's taking place tomorrow. It's going to be really interesting and engaging, so I recommend you join us there. If you click on down to your track tab, this is where you can go to review your index progress over time and connect your wearable device if you have one. By connecting your wearable device, you'll get daily updates to your index scores across the 3 pillars to provide you with up-to-date insight into your health and well-being. And you can also see the impacts that the sessions that you've joined in the past have had on your heart rate there. All of our sessions are recorded, so if you miss one that you're really looking forward to, or if you have space in your calendar and you would like to practice, you can come on here to the recordings tab. You can either click on these filters here to refine your search, or if you have a favorite practice or practitioner, or if you can spell, then you can search it in the bar here. And then finally, we have our articles section, which are a really great way to expand your understanding of a certain topic and are co-written with well-renowned experts to give you further insight into the practices and concepts in our sessions. So if I stop sharing my screen there, as we've heard today, our ability to respond to stressful situations is really strengthened when we are regularly filling up our tank and taking moments for ourselves to end that stress cycle and restoring to your parasympathetic nervous system. So just take 5 minutes to prioritize yourself, to regulate your nervous system and build that resilience so we can keep on feeling and performing at our best. I strongly recommend taking some time for yourself in the next week. Just give it a go. 5 minutes. What are you risking? I'll hand back to you, Riva, to close.
That's it. We are over time, so I will close. I'm sorry we didn't get to questions, but we will address those in some way in our key takeaways. So I will make sure that we do get to them afterwards. Okay, a big thank you again to all our panelists, and thank you to those for joining today as well.